For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tanya Quinn-Maguire. I'm the president of FICSA, and I'm very happy to welcome you all to today's Ask the FICSA Expert session on understanding unconscious bias and its impact in the workplace. We are privileged to have with us a genuine expert, Panos Chirvataitis. Did I say it right?
No. It's okay, yeah. No worries, Tanya.
I'm really sorry, Thomas. Yes, I have many ways in my head how that could be pronounced, so I hope you will correct me in a moment. Panos is the WHO EMRO staff counsellor and has, I'm sure, a wealth of experience to share with us on this specific topic. We were expecting to have with us today also the EMRO, WHO EMRO ombudsperson, Gemma Vestal, but unfortunately she has been kept in another meeting today. So we'll go ahead with Panos. I think we have the expert in the room. I just say from my own personal perspective, unconscious bias is something that I was made aware of myself. Oh, I can't remember, quite a few years ago when I was doing a training on diversity and inclusion, and we addressed unconscious bias, and it was quite a relief, I have to say, to understand that everybody has them. It's not something we should be ashamed of. We all have unconscious biases, but it's important to know what they are and important to know how that impacts us in our workplace. Without any further ado, I'll just mention that the meeting is being recorded as of now, as is normal for our sessions in this regard. So I'll pass the floor now to Panos, and thank you very much again. Thanks, Panos.
Thank you, Tanya. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for inviting us here. I know that Dr. Gemma wanted to be with all of you, and she's very eager to promote this kind of sessions, but unfortunately, she's occupied with the Ombuds meeting. So, as Tanya said, we all have unconscious biases, but it's very important to tackle these issues and these psychosocial difficulties, topics that sometimes they bring a bit of conflict in our day-to-day interactions, because it's the first step to overcome these biases and other issues. And from my side and from WHO EMRO side, this is a session that we promote under the umbrella of the Respectful Workplace initiative that we have. And it has been very, very beneficial for our colleagues, and I hope that you will enjoy. I would like also to ask for your active participation. I don't want this to be a boring lecture from my side. I know it's hard when we're online and we're not together in a physical space, but I will do my best, and please do your best. If you want to open your cameras to see some faces here, if you want to stop me at any time to ask questions, make your comments, let's make it informal and interactive. The main objectives for today is to raise awareness about unconscious biases and to understand really the impact and the devastating effect that can have in our workplaces, and at the end to provide some practical tools and ideas on how to tackle them. But for me, the most important thing for today is for you all to try and experience the unconscious bias, to feel them, which is the first step to overcome them. But before I jump in, how do you feel today? I know that some of you, you're waking up, some of you, towards the end of the day, you might be feeling tired, you might be feeling, very enthusiastic about the session, but let's hear from you. Please write in the chat or take the floor, raise your hand, I can coordinate as you feel more comfortable. Please, Paula, yes.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for this session. I'm feeling positive, but I'm also exhausted. So that's just the reality of things at work, and it's been a busy year, and it's exciting and exhausting at the same time. So I'm somewhere there.
Thank you for sharing, and be the brave one to start the discussion. Thank you. And I see Tanya saying she's excited. Vivian feeling very good in the chat. Thank you. I know that we are all maybe also a bit tired from having these online sessions, not interacting in the same room. But for me, this is an opportunity to take the temperature and to engage you a bit, you know, not to hide behind your screens. I see more people feeling good and tired. Someone is moving today. Good luck with that.
That's Irwin. Poor Irwin has had the pleasure of moving across the world with his family. So he has every right to be tired, definitely.
Exactly, yeah, and it is always a stressful situation to have moving and transitions. It's not easy. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue with the first quick response in the chat, but relating to the unconscious bias this time. I want to read you a statement, and I would like to ask for your really fast response in the chat. Do not try and, you know, make up your brain. Just share the first thoughts that come in mind. So the statement is that a father and his son are in a car accident. The father dies at the scene, and the son, badly injured, is rushed to the hospital. In the operating room, the surgeon refuses to operate him, saying, "I cannot operate on this boy. He's my son." Who is the surgeon? Fast, write in the chat. The mother. Excellent. For any second, or did someone thought about someone else? Someone was maybe confused, didn't really made sense of the information, had to read it again?
I will say, Thomas, that I have seen this before. And when the very first time I saw it, I was going, it's the grandfather. No, it can't be the grandfather. And it did take me a couple of seconds to get to the mother. So I understand the point you're trying to make with this. Oh, stepfather.
Yeah,
Excellent.
stepfather, yes, I just saw the comment. You know, we all have convinced ideas about jobs, genders, so many categories. And when we're presenting with this kind of statements, we can really see the mental shortcuts that we're taking in our brains. You know, how the surgeon sometimes be a woman. We are very used to have certain images and ideas about people, about jobs, about gender, about so many different categories. And our world is often not designed for all of us. The introverts, the people with neurodiversity, the people with belonging minorities, or regarding to gender, to sexual orientation, to religious, to overweight people, to short people, to tall people. You know, so many categories out there, and definitely our workplaces are not fit for all. And now the last few years, we have started the discussion around it in order to be more inclusive, to be able to accommodate everyone's needs. And this is why I think this topic is so important, because we shouldn't rule from a place of authority that we know what is best for everyone, but we need to listen everyone needs. So, what are these unconscious biases? Have you ever heard about them before? Do you have an idea? I know Tanya had an awareness session, she mentioned, but someone else might want to share experiences, or is it this a new topic for you?
Please feel free to just open your mic and respond, or put your hand up or respond in the chat, whichever is easiest for you.
I see a response, a prejudice regarding a subject or a person. This is more about not unconscious biases, but explicit biases. The biases that we know that we have. And some people, unfortunately, and I hope not in this group, they might be racist, or they might be sexist, or any other kind of prejudices. But unconscious biases, as I mentioned before, are these biases that we don't know that we have, and we all have them at the same time. And it's based on the evolutionary mechanism in the brain that we need to make fast, rapid decisions, especially in times of crisis, in times of emergencies, but the same system is there always. So when we see someone or a situation, we tend to categorize very quickly, to put people in boxes, to put the situation in a certain cognitive circuit that we have in order to feel comfortable. We don't like to be in uncertain situations, but these systems can make mistakes, and if we don't cognitively appraise our assumptions and beliefs, we might turn into wrong places that we don't want to be. So it is these mental circuits that create the unconscious biases. And I will continue here with another short game, let's say. It's not exactly a game in regards of competition, but I would like you to close your eyes, feel comfortable, and I will read to you some names and job titles. And again, I want you to feel free to let your mind create mental images to see if something will come there. So close your eyes and try to bring a face in your fantasy, in your mental image. So the job titles are as follows: nurse, flight attendant, construction worker, police officer, CEO, surgeon, field worker, cleaner, scientist, plumber, airline pilot, a rock star, a serial killer, basketball player, president. And now let's continue with some names. Jonathan, Abdul, Katie, Juan, Mariam, Hillary, Yoko. Let's try some additional names. Mohamed Gonzalez, Jamal Horowitz, Abdullah McDonald, Penelope Jerkins. And you can open your eyes and tell me about the experience. Was it easy to have the mental images? Was it a bit confusing at the end? How did it go? Sorry, I don't know if you're talking to us, but you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, for the first one, it kind of came pretty quickly, but I already noticed that there were some sort of patterns that I knew, that I'm making an assumption of what someone who works in a certain job may look like, without excluding anyone else from it. But the one where I had a bit of a harder time imagining something was the last one. Just because for some, I just thought to myself, wait a second, how? Okay, so that name doesn't fit with the surname, but why would I think that? So, and I've grown up internationally. I don't, but still, these are things that based on who you interact with and how how you live your life sometimes are harder still to imagine. There's preconceived notions of what someone looks like or seems like with a certain name or, a surname even, just to, or how someone looks. Yeah. So the last one was a bit more confusing for me. I'm going to put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. And this is, what I want to do here. It's for us to see this, breakout in the system when things are not going as expected, how the brain can have these little slips. And imagine, and we will see that later on, what is happening in a selection panel, or when we get a CV and we see the name, how fast we can make assumptions that we are not aware because they are not on the conscious level. And that can make a big difference in the selection process, for example. And this is exactly what was happening, I would say, since forever until the beginning of the 90s, because all the HR surveys they were coming back from the workplaces, people logically saying that no, I don't have biases against Black people or against women, or I'm happy to work with anyone from any culture across the globe. But still, we know that people are suffering in the workplaces, that these things are happening. So the scientists from Harvard University and the Washington University, they came up with this, what they call the implicit associations test. And basically, instead of logically assess and appraise the situation at the workplace, you go there and you have very quickly click right or left between two images or statements, so they don't assess really your logical capacity, but the automatic associations in the brain. And this is a longitudinal study for more than 40, 50 years now, and some really fascinating and sad results are coming. That 70% of people have a preference for white over Black people. More people associate male with science and female with arts. 76% have a preference for people without a disability. And I'm sure that if we openly ask about these issues, people would say, no, of course, I want to help people with disability, but something is playing underground there. And just for you to be sure that I'm not lying, this is my test. I did it first time when I was a university student in my bachelor degree, and I didn't remember really. It was part of an essay of an assignment. And when I was discussing with Gemma and colleagues for the respectful workplace, I remembered and I went back, and this is how I found the test. I did it again, and after all these years of studies, of training, of being in the workplaces, trying to be part of all these initiatives, I still have a moderate association for female with arts and males for science. So we need to become aware of our conscious biases, and we need to open the discussion in the spaces to be able to manage them, because we cannot take the blame for having them, but we have the responsibility not to let them affect the work that we are doing. And again, yes, please, Tanya.
Thanks, Thanos. You're possibly getting to this, but I'm also wondering, we learn about as well, like confirmation bias or you know, a bias towards if somebody looks like you or speaks in the same way as you, that you tend to automatically be think more positively about somebody, and we're not conscious of that. We just assume that because they speak the same way or have a similar ideas or whatever, that they're actually, and the contrary, of course, is the same. So it's not always just about gender or race or ability or not ability. It can often be a bias towards certain thoughts or actions or words or whatever as well. But I think it's also because that's something I found myself when I've made perhaps a connection with somebody. I have always only positive thoughts towards you, Thanos, and nobody could convince me otherwise. But it is possible that you will not be the expert on everything, on every topic. But you know what I mean. We tend to make that relationship a little bit overly positively as well.
Yeah. And to generalize or to find common, as you said, common traits and attributes to relate with. We have that need as human beings. And we have so many different categories of unconscious biases. People, you know, they come to the interview and they are like, oh, we went to the same school together, or we are from the same university. And instantly we're changing our nonverbal communication, the way we look, a subtle smile, and that can be a probe for the candidate to relax and to become more open. Or on the contrary, if we see something that we don't appreciate, and how we might ask a question can make all the difference. Of course. So this will be the trial, but I will present you a picture. And again, I would like you to write in the chat, the first word that comes in mind. Let's start with this one. Please write in the chat or take the floor, feel free. Happy? Happy, happiness. Strong, of course. A happy woman. Okay, so let's move to the next one. What comes to mind with this image? Thoughtful. That's an interesting one. Deep thought. A motorcyclist. Yeah, come on, people, speak your mind. Gangster, thoughtful. No, you see that picture. You're scrolling the web, and you see that in front of you. What's the first thing that comes in mind? A rock star, someone thoughtful, cool, a biker, redneck, gangster, owner of a bar, biker.
I have to say, the first thing I saw were the tattoos and the emblem on his jacket, and I just thought sexist.
Sexist, okay.
The first thing that hit me. Second thing was he looks kind of cool if he wasn't such a sexist.
Yeah, for me it can be a bit also aggressive, or I'm becoming vigilant. If I was walking in a dark alley and I see him, I might be like, okay, I need to be on alert. You never know. Okay. And now, bad boy, yes. Let's go here. What do we think? Doctor? Of course. Well, I'm working for WHO. It has to be a doctor. Old school pharmacies.
It also has like a fatherly look to it.
Mhm.
Somebody, there's immediate trust compared to the other one.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Mhm.
the fatherly figure, it really brings, comfort, emotions of comfort, and I feel safe with someone that reminds me, someone so close, a father figure.
Mm.
And yes, you're right, Daniela. He's the same person from before. And I'm not kidding, I can send you also articles. His name is David Ores, and he's a general practitioner who lives and works in Lower East Side of Manhattan. He advocates for human rights, for accessible medical health for everyone, and he's spending much of his time helping the vulnerable and those who are in need. But when I do that in in the room, I have two big posters, so I split people in two different groups in the room, presenting the poster, and the things that I hear for the first image you cannot imagine. For gangster, bad boy, someone who is even a rapist sometimes, just from the looks, from the tattoos, from the leather jacket, and of course, for being in WHO presenting a picture of a doctor, I've heard everything under the sun: a savior, humanitarian, anthropist, philanthropist, everything. And it's the same person, it's the same individual. So it is something that is happening automatically, because unconscious biases is how we we are here today and who we are as people. They're part of our personality, upbringing, family dynamics, the books that we have read, the movies that we have watched, the jokes, the family dynamics, our communities, everything that shaped us until who we are today. And that's why we all have them. They're universal. But as the quote says here, the problem with stereotypes is not that they are always false, but they are incomplete. They don't say the whole story. So we have to consciously and mindfully tackle them and appraise them and criticize them in order to make sense and have the full puzzle here, which is very important, working for the UN, working for international organizations to try and understand others completely, to make sense of our colleagues, our teams, departments, workplaces, organizations. It's a very complex and dynamic system, and we are part of it. We have to be, we have to have the responsibility for being part in this huge system. So let me play a video here. I hope that is the sound okay?
Thanos, was there supposed to be sound? I can't
Sorry,
hear.
Tanya.
I don't hear
Ah,
any sound.
I got a comment that I can hear the sound.
I
Yeah,
can
more
hear
tech.
it, yes. I hear it. Yeah.
Okay, could be my settings. I'll figure it out. Thank you.
Okay. I guess many of you are sitting in selection panels. Have you seen that video before?
No, never.
It is
Nope.
unfortunate. Dr. Gemma sent it to me,
Mm.
and because she was also part of the Global Staff Association of in many selection panels, it was her mantra. It was what she was always following, and we are surprised that many people, even senior managers in different levels, they've never seen that before or even heard about unconscious bias before. So we need to circulate. Of course, I will send you the presentation. Please make sure that it reaches as many people as we can.
Okay.
Yes, Tanya.
Thanks, Thanos. Yeah, no, it's a great video. I saw it during the high-level committee and management sessions, and I think it's very sad that in the UN particularly we constantly have to train and remind people about these things. And I have to say, even though I am trained, and as you said yourself, I know that I have unconscious biases as well, but I still have to catch myself occasionally. But I would say, just to give you an example of that, one of my first experiences of unconscious biases was when I first arrived in the UN, and both my husband. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's spot on.
So both my husband and I were both working in the same organ. We weren't married at that time. We had come together, but we weren't married. And we were working in the same organization, and we were both at the same grade. We were both at the G level grade at G5. And we were constantly remarking on the differences because he was administrative assistant and I was an administrative assistant. We had exactly the same job title. And we were constantly remarking to each other how differently we were treated. And I wasn't quite used to that. Surprisingly, even though Ireland could have been considered those days a little bit backward in some areas, that was not the way I was used to in the workplace. And one of the best things was, I'd answer the phone and they'd ask for my boss, and I'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, she's not here. She's away from the office at the moment." And they say, "Oh, you must be her secretary. Please take a message." My husband would answer the phone, and they instantly, people would say, "Can I speak to blah blah blah, his boss?" And he'd say, "No, he's not here." And they'd say, "Oh, you must be the man in charge. Can you help me with this, this, and this?" And it was as blunt as that. It was so blunt. And even when we came to have both of us were applying for a desk audit to go further up, and they immediately gave an upgrade to my husband, even though I had more education and other relevant education and experience, and I was told that I didn't have the required on numerous occasions, and we pushed back and pushed back. In fact, my husband then refused his upgrade because he said he was not being treated in the same as other people. So there you go, in our wonderful world. And I wish I could say that experience from 30 years ago is a rare experience and has changed now. In fact, I think it's probably more embedded. I see more and more cases of it, sadly, as I live and work in the UN system.
Thank you, Tanya, for sharing, and sorry for this experience. I think no, it's always even if we don't have the responsibility, this is really not the treatment that we want for our people, for anyone. And as you said, it's happening. It's still happening, and in certain parts of the world and in certain positions happening even more than before. And it is sad to observe that. But yeah, maybe more people have experience. You want to share observations, things that happen to you or colleagues. So let's learn from each other.
I can't say that I'm conscious of having seen an unconscious bias to the extent of, for instance, of what Tanya was sharing. I'm sure that it occurs, but I can't say that I have been as conscious in noticing them. Maybe I've just tried to always empathize with one side or another, rather than sometimes looking at what may be happening on an unconscious bias level, which is a whole other level of information. Because for me, you know, I still have that idea that that when people say something, that's what they're saying, that's what they mean, which unfortunately does not happen. And but I'm sure there's things that I've seen but have not been aware that they've been an unconscious bias by someone or towards even me, maybe. I'm not aware of that.
Thank you for speaking up your mind. And you know, the example, the experience that Tanya had, it was almost on the bridge of being explicit biases. It was like almost sexist behavior.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
even unconscious. And sometimes it's hard
Yeah.
also to separate the two. Sometimes our conscious biases drive our explicit biases, our prejudices. But I can recall, you know, instances at the workplace how I see someone behaving or reacting to a woman versus a man, or to someone who comes from the region to a Western European looking. And it's always funny with me because I'm Greek, but I look more Arab or Palestinian or from the region than from being in Europe. And people are getting very confused with that. When they speak to me in Arabic, from my looks, they assume that I am from Middle East somewhere, and I speak English or I don't relate with that culture. And I can see these things very often.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, no,
Please.
I was just going to say my other thing, and this goes both ways. I have had people assuming when I was only a normal admin assistant, and I say that in sardonically, people would assume that I wasn't capable of certain things, or that because you're just a G staff, you therefore can't understand global issues or whatever. And then since I've become president, and my title, that's all that's changed. My grade has remained the same. I'm still a general service staff member. People, particularly commissioners, ambassadors, high-level people in New York, automatically assume that I'm a minimum P4 or P5, and they are genuinely shocked when I say I'm G6. I'm like, why is my grade? What has my grade got to do with my capability or my intelligence or my competence? And I think all of us do that a little bit. I have to say, I see that. That's probably the one thing I see in the UN system all the time, more than anything, is this bias from against general service staff, which I think many of us are unconscious of, but it's when we are general service, we're very aware of it, I have to say.
Well,
You know,
thanks. Sorry to jump in. Oh, sorry, Jalil, go ahead.
I didn't
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Yes, we
Jalil.
can.
Well, I wanted just to share the experience for the interagency games. As we are participant, we are not looking at all to the grade or to the level of the people. And I remember once I was called by one staff. I thought it's one staff, and he was the SG of the IFAD, and he wanted to group all the IFAD people in one hotel. I said, no, it's not that one. But at the end, he presented himself as SG of the IFAD. I said, sorry, doesn't make any difference. But just to show that the level of people doesn't matter if they are G or P or junior or whatever. It's a matter of the task they are doing. That's it. But not if they are men or women or whatever. That's very important to show to those people who are looking for titles. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you. And I can see a list of speakers. Thanks so much, Jalil, and nice to see you. I see on the list there's Sven, followed by Sarah Kingston.
Sarah is next, yes.
Sarah Kingham, and then Paula. No, according to this, it's Sven first, and then Sarah, and then Paula.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to mention here that for me personally, I think the organization also has to change a little bit in the categories. I find it still a bit difficult that GS is general service and the other ones are professional. We have a lot of GS staff that do as professional jobs as the P staff, and still we have it in the statutes. So I think this is also maybe in the midterm where the UN system has to adapt it a little bit, because we were called secretariat, our secretaries, and we are not secretariat, because the world sometimes still have this feeling that we are all doing only secretariat service, and then it will be extremely difficult, for example, for my colleague, my neighbor is a female technical officer. She's extremely knowledgeable in the environment sector, but she's a secretary, and that makes it very difficult sometimes in meetings, particularly when you engage with industry or with stakeholders that are not so familiar with this UN system that we have.
Sarah, and then Paula.
Yes, I actually wanted to build on what you said, Tanya, about the GMP. And I've been in a meeting before where a P staff kind of spoke about something, did a presentation, and then he opened the floor for questions. So then hands went up, and then the first person that asked the question was actually a G staff, and then was saying, "What about this?" And yeah, when I say staff should ask question, I'm not referring to G staff actually.
No.
And I thought that was actually extreme. Or for example, we'll have a meeting, and then you have like maybe the team lead will say, "Yes, I would like to thank my colleagues, which are the P staff, and then our assistants," and then you're like, "Okay, I'm also a colleague. Why do you now say my colleague and then the assistant, as if just to make clear separation?" Yeah, this prefix is a big deal actually.
Yeah, I'm sorry you're experiencing it too, Sarah. I think we all do. Yeah.
And I'm really sorry about that. And again, this is an example that crossed the limits of unconscious biases. This is explicit biases, very, very specific, and that really contributes to the psychological safety in our workplaces and in teams. And people they really feel hurt. They feel disappointed, not valued. That has a direct outcome on our performance and how we are as human beings, especially in the UN global community. It's the entry point for all of us here is that we want to collaborate, we want to connect regardless of race, nationality, gender, and all these categories. And I want to bring to your attention that if we have and we are receiving this kind of biases, we have to always think about more marginalized groups, UNVs, general professionals, junior doctors coming for internships. All these groups are receiving also discrimination and are victims of unconscious biases. And very often they come to us, staff counselors, for support. And we see the circle of violence and negativity that someone who has received this kind of treatment, it's very easy if they don't reflect and process to become the perpetrators, to become the bullies on more or weaker groups, let's say. We need to become aware of this. I see, I don't know, Mohammed next, or is this an old hand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I just wanted to share with you something, because I was listening to the discussion and the experience of colleagues about this unconscious bias and the experience that they have. But it is unfortunately a very bad culture that I don't know whether this discussion in which way would be helpful to remove some of these unconscious biases among colleagues. Because I have witnessed several cases, and it's good that we have this kind of discussion and sharing experience, but I think it should be from top down. So there should be a culture change to have this kind of unconscious bias when there is in an organization there is a prevailing unconscious bias by the key decision making, then it doesn't make any sense. We gather here and share our experience about that we have been a victim of unconscious bias, and I have feel it by every cell of my body that I'm subject to this unconscious bias based on nationality. So that's something that we should think about. That we should so because it's unbelievable when we see that the key players in their organization, when they can make a change in this, they are not in this kind of gathering, or how we can provide this help, provide them with this information that, look, you have to do something. So that's my comment. So let's turn it to some action oriented recommendation if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, and it is very important and very true what you're saying. Well, as an external to your group here, I have to say that in WHO, what we're trying to do is to have different levels of interventions. Of course, the individual counseling is always part of what we're doing as staff counselors, but with this respectful workplace initiative, we target mid-level managers, colleagues on every level, but also a specialized training for senior management, for WRs. So we want to try to have entry points on different level in the organization. This is the only way to change the organization culture. But it's time consuming, it's long-term planning, and it's not something that it's happening overnight.
May I just comment on that specific point by Mohammed very quickly? Is that okay, Thomas?
Yeah,
thank you.
Sure.
I absolutely, Mohammed, fully agree with you. It is a question of organizational culture, and very often it's a question of the opinions and the attitude of the executive head, which actually makes the biggest differences. If they have a zero tolerance approach, then that can be applied across the board. However, the reality is what we've seen across the organizations and across the UN system in general is that it has to be a holistic approach. So exactly as Thanos says, it cannot just be aimed at the executive head. It cannot just be aimed at senior managers, because all of us have, in this case, all of us have unconscious biases. And what we've been doing in FICSA, and our FICSA members have been well informed, I think, the impact of unconscious biases, how that it can contribute to instability in the workplace, to unconscious unequal hiring practices, etc., and how and in fact on the mental health and well-being of staff in general, as you alluded to yourself, Mohammed. So I think it has to be a holistic approach, and this is just one way of us as individuals being more aware of our own, how we can affect change ourselves. And yes, and then absolutely, at the level of FICSA, at the level of staff associations, at a level of individual staff members, we should be able to continue to bring it to the higher level. Believe me, it has been brought and it will continue to be. And there are UN trainings and whatever on unconscious bias, but you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, as I think we all all aware of, unfortunately, Mohammed. That does not mean that we should stop, and we should also improve ourselves where we can. Thank you, and sorry for taking the floor before the others.
No, of course, no, it's interactive, but I also want to say here that it's also a part of a training for us, because we can start with our small teams, we can start with our people here in your group or in your organizational staff association, that we feel safe sharing with Tanya that, you know, that happened the other day and I want to discuss with you. It might be very scary for some people to go directly to senior management or advocate in a higher level for these things. But if we experience with our people that we trust and we know that the relations are stable and they're not going to break by discussing difficult topics, that can train us for going to the next level. And it is very important. Please, Paula, I think you're next. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm actually put my hand up and down because I'm really fascinated by the conversation and just want to thank everybody. I definitely agree for the holistic approach, and that each one of us can bring about the change by actually acting on the trainings and the information that we receive, because you can go to a training and be mindful for 5 minutes and then step out and not apply what you learned. And unfortunately, that happens. But it is an opportunity. What for me is also very important is accountability, because there are people that want to share or speak up or point out things, and they do not do so for fear of retribution or so forth, and unconscious biases even. And I think that the issue is what was alluded to before is also safety in the workplace and a lack of accountability from the top to the bottom, because if those at the top are not accountable for the way that they behave and the things that they say, it is very difficult for others, because even though we do work in an international organization, hierarchy is still very embedded, as we've heard. So it is sometimes very difficult for people to overcome that fear to speak out, especially if it's not an unconscious bias, but that sometimes certain levels of management may issue sort of veiled threats as to people expressing themselves, which should not happen. So while I do believe in training and I do believe in information, and I believe all of us can change at any time, if there is no accountability for the actions of someone, we will be at this forever. And I'm not saying that we stop. You always have to continue. But a vital element is to implement a level of accountability for every single person, irrespective of who they are. So UNSG down to whoever it is, or up or sideways, I don't care. But accountability is key. Otherwise, after a certain amount of time, people can become weary and tired of fighting the battle. So it really is important that we find ways to keep people accountable as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, I think, and I hope that we all agree with what you're saying. It is of paramount. It's critical. And Benoit?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, now I want to thank Paola for what she said. I think it's really touching the right place. I find it. I mean, I feel a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe it's an unconscious bias because I'm a white male in the 40s. So I feel like yeah, maybe I'm the one who benefits from most of the unconscious bias, and because of that, it's even more important that people like me can also be aware of it. So I remember that like 2-3 years ago, we had on LinkedIn a training also on unconscious bias, and there was one link that was referred to in that training that I found very useful, and it still comes to me still today. I live with it. It's a test that is done by Harvard on unconscious bias, and you can take the test, and it's about different things, like about color of skin, the way people speak, etc. And you can take it yourself to discover your own unconscious biases. And I find it to be extremely valuable. I mean, it helps me at least to identify, because I thought I don't have biases, but after that I thought, okay, maybe I have to be careful. Yeah, I will share the link, but I find it really useful.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, these are the same tests that I shared earlier. Maybe you joined a bit after.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I missed the beginning.
No.
Yes.
No. It's great because you reinforced what I said. They're fantastic. They're fantastic, and sometimes it's shocking to see biases that we might have, and we would swear that no, I'm not. I'm super equally towards people with disability, and then you see that something might be happening there. Thank you very much for sharing. And I want also to say here that be open to feedback and always ask for feedback. This is something that Gemma she's a huge advocate. After this session, after facilitating a workshop or a training or a presentation, open the space for people to come and give you feedback. You might said something or present something or show the way you show an information or you spoke about an information that it might for someone be biased. So we have to listen to our people. We have to have these open spaces. I see some comments in the chat. I don't know, Tanya, if you see something relevant, feel free if someone is saying something, because I'm doing both.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a general agreement with Paula said, etc. Yeah.
Okay, so if we're okay with this round of discussion, we can move. If someone wants to add, please feel free. And so the impact in our workplaces is everywhere, and I have this slide here just to highlight this in every process in all the working cycle, from recruitment to hiring, to how we give the offer, to onboarding to the benefits plan, everywhere, really everywhere. Even on how we took corrective actions, we can have unconscious biases because the systems are made of people. We are, small parts in huge systems, but they are by definition imperfect because we are imperfect. And I know that it's hard for some of us to hear that and to take it inside and internalize it, but it is human nature and we shouldn't feel guilty, we shouldn't take the blame, but we can change, we can move, and we can find our weak spots and try to improve them. Yes, Tanya, please.
Can I just as a suggestion for another iteration of this training, if you think it's appropriate, to add one or two points to that list and the impact on toxic work, how it contributes to toxic workplaces as well, and also the impact on staff mental health and well-being. I think it's important. Yeah, thank you. If you feel it's appropriate, thank you.
Of course, thank you, and thank you for your feedback, Lucy. Just writing down to add it there. Thank you, Tanya. And I have here the types of unconscious biases, or some types, because really, if you Google, you will find dozens of them, and more are coming as we progress to unpacking new issues and people really sharing their minds. These are the most common. Gender, conformity. This is the one that you are sitting on a panel selection with your manager or you with your second level supervisor. We have the tendency to agree because it is hard to raise a different opinion instead in front of people with more power, but all we want to be likable, so we don't want to to make people not happy with our opinions. Difficult issues also. By unpacking this, many dynamics come into play. Affinity bias is what Tanya was saying before. We meet someone and we are from the same hometown, or we went to the same school together. Instantly, we have a tendency towards liking them or not, or it can be the opposite for different reasons. Horns and hello is this bias that we see one positive thing on someone and we generalize that this person is fantastic, or we see something that we don't approve, maybe the tattoos or earrings or something in their appearance that we are against, and then we think that this person must be terrible professional or they might be a bad parent because we generalize. With age, we see it very often in our workplaces, this polarized opinion, old people, they don't know how to use technology well, and younger professionals, they are not good leaders. Something very, very common. Contrast is it's happening a lot in the selection process. We tend to act as if we are in a reality show and we judge the candidates, not on the selection that we have to do, who has the better skills or the most experience, but if this individual is better or worse than the previous, which becomes almost like a battle there. And the confirmations are the ones that we tend to want to find what we're looking for. It comes from the research, it comes from the criteria for scientific research. It's an attribution error there that we design our research and our thoughts, the process that we are making decisions by wanting to be true. We want what we think to become reality. So we will look for these small things that will reassure us that we are right about our thinking. And we might lose very important information that can contradict what we believe. What is happening now? What Tanya was saying before, her comment about toxic workplaces and mental health and staff well-being. And I found this very, very interesting term by the Erving Goffman, a sociologist, covering. And we used to think covering related to religion practices, but this is something like a social covering. People, individuals, start hiding parts of their identity. And this creates toxic workplaces for sure, and toxic internalized experiences that leads to mental health, to increased stress, to depression, to anxiety, and people suffer. Right? So we have to start hiding ethnicity, marital status, or disabilities, chronic diseases, mental health issues, sexual orientation, gender identities, so many things. But when we become, or when we have in the surface for so many hours of the day just one identity, we're losing parts of ourselves, we're losing parts of who we are, and we tend to feel at the essence very scared and afraid. And when this becomes a constant and a continuous battle, we might be very resilient, but at some point it's inevitable that some people will break. And we should not allow this to happen. And I see a comment from Tanya that I think societal and cultural norms can also fit into those as well as generational norms. Yes, in the UN, and great covering. Yeah, that can be an interesting also study to do, the great covering. Yeah, I don't want someone to know because they will categorize me. I'm hiding that. Yeah. So many things.
So you actually apply the unconscious biases towards yourself as well, not only to others. Yeah.
It can
Because
be
if
like
you're
that.
hiding, in this case, if you're covering something, it's because you have that bias. You might not think it's a bias. You might think, I'm just protecting myself in this environment, or I'm helping myself, but it might be based on someone else's bias.
Assumptions, yes,
Yeah, assumptions and biases that others have, so you apply it to yourself. Some people might not even be aware that they're doing that. They might just think, oh well, I'm a private person. Why do I have to tell people whether I'm married or not, or any of these things? Yeah.
In that case, I think it's that society has made us accept that those biases or stigmas are what we should adhere to, and if we don't adhere to those, the problem is with us and not with society.
Yeah, feeling shame for that. Yeah.
Shame
Okay.
for whatever the reason is. Yeah.
And I think it can be also both ways. It can, for some people, or for even, it can be for the same individual in different identities. Sometimes it can be unconscious bias towards myself, but other times it can be covering because I've been treated negatively about an identity I carry. So I've learned to hide, to put it under the carpet. And colleagues, we learn these things from a very young age. When we reach the workplaces, we're already, our biases are shaped. We need conscious effort to change them.
Yeah.
And some relevant examples here, like this study from the Center of Talent Innovation for Disabilities and Inclusion, that they found that 39% of employees with disabilities have disclosed their condition to their only 39 have disclosed their disability status with their manager. Fewer have disclosed with team members and HR, and of course, almost none of them with their clients, with partners, with other stakeholders. Yet, we know that people, for example, suffering from diabetes, they have to go take short breaks for insulin injection, or neurodiverse people with in the autistic spectrum or any other, special ability on that field, they might need different ergonomics, lower lighting or more light, or noise-free spaces, not being able to work in an open space. And these are small things that we can change, or we can provide to our people with reasonable accommodations, with different initiatives. But if we don't know from our people, we cannot help them. But the responsibility for people to come forward, as Mohammed was saying before, needs to come from the decision makers, because these are the ones that essentially will open these spaces. And of course, from our side, to push to them to open, to create, to develop these places, these spaces. And an interesting study, it's fascinating, really comes from the arts, from the national orchestra players in the US, that until as late as late 70s, only 5% of the top 5 orchestras in the US employed females. So there was discussion started, and different studies were trying to explore the issue and identify the causes and solutions. And hopefully some people thought that, it is not normal that women cannot play as good as men. And this started the whole discussion. And long story short, what they were trying and what they found was that the conscious biases against women and unconscious biases was causing the issue, and they start having blind auditions. So the judge could not see who is playing. That improved the situation, but not significantly, until some people were observing the auditions and they could hear the sound of the woman's shoes, the tack, 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 tack sound on the wooden floor. And then they ask people to perform barefoot. And that made all the difference. Now the numbers are significantly increased, and we moving towards a more equal working environment. But if we think that this is happening in the arts space, that traditionally things are more liberal and these biases exist, I think it's an illusion to think that it's not happening in our workplaces. And we know that it's happening, but it's a great example to see either these minor hidden unconscious biases, how they can make a difference in the real outcome. We have 10 minutes left, really fast. How to combat unconscious biases. Again, we all have them. Do not beat yourself after this session. Do not take the blame. It's normal. We're human beings. Just become aware of the unconscious biases. Understand why they are harmful. And from your small little areas of control and influence, reflect what you can do. It can be with a colleague. It can be in the during lunch to invite someone and apologize for not have done that before. From the interpersonal, then we can go to the group, to the team, to the units, organize something with your department, have an informal session with your technical team about the unconscious biases. Small steps, small things. Don't only target the system, the change of culture in systemic terms. Start with your people. And that doesn't need to involve complex initiatives and costly, because if we continue discussing, the budget will come, who is paying for what, how much money do we have. This is for the big initiatives, for the big changes, but we can make a difference on one-to-one level without needing really a lot of money and costly initiatives. So everyday interactions and actions. Become self-aware, go do the tests. They're funny to explore and experiment with the implicit association test, and it can give you a great insight about yourself, things that you have never imagined. And this is the first step for behavior management. And spend some time there to reflect also on your feelings when you see your results. You might be scared, you might be disappointed with yourself, but this can act as your compass on what I need to change, what emotions do I need to process, why I see my result and I feel guilty. It's different from feeling angry or feeling sad. So become a bit more mindful. It's always a good idea to become a better person. Then reflect on your story and recognize from where these biases are coming. I'm sure that it will be from your communities, your culture, your family, parents, carers, from school, from teachers. So again, do not blame yourself, but make them part of your existence, your identity, and don't shoot yourself for having biases. Because they brought you here, and at some point in your life, they helped you. So befriend them and tell them that I don't need you anymore. I know better now, and I can move on. Then go back to your teams and have these discussions, pick up about biases, and it's always helpful if we want to approach an issue like this to share our biases. That's why I'm saying, first, experiment with yourself. If you have managerial responsibilities, if you are sitting in selection panels, try to review, as the video was saying, every aspect of the employment cycle, from how we advertise, how we recruit, how we conduct the interviews, and how we discuss about the potential candidate and who was the best fit for the post. I hope that this is happening, but if not, really emphasize the need for diverse interview teams. It's important not to have one mind and the main group taking the decision. Try to mentor people who are not like you. And when I first said that into a training, someone, and I was really happy for the comment, they said, I don't understand. Why not mentor someone who is like me? I want to mentor someone, who is similar. And I understand this is comforting. It comes, we want to feel we don't want to feel that someone can bring conflict. Let's put it that way. We don't want people to challenge our ideas the way that we think. It's stressful. We don't like changes. But when you mentor people who are not like you, you really get to know someone who is different, to meet different elements, different cultures. If you only mentor the person from the same university, from the same hometown, from the same NGO that you started also, you are staying in your bubble, you're staying in your comfort zone. And change only happens when we take the risk, in the interpersonal risk, to go out of our comfort zone. So challenge yourself. Please, Paula.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt. I mean, it's also interesting, but I just wanted to add that change does come when you meet people who are not like you, and to seek those out, or even in your own environment. It's very important. At the same time, I think it's also important to know your boundaries. This doesn't mean, I think this doesn't mean go and mentor someone and if after a while you don't feel comfortable, or that person is simply, not a fit, I don't think one should feel obliged to mentor someone that makes you feel uncomfortable, or maybe has different issues or things going on. So I do believe in opening up and meeting different people and having that experience and giving people that chance. But you have to take care of yourself. So I think knowing your boundaries and knowing what works also for you is very important in this case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will go back to.
Can I just remind you, there are about 3 minutes left for the meeting, and I'm so sorry that I know many people will have to go on, as do I, very soon to another meeting. So I'm sorry to interrupt, because obviously it's generating a lot of interest. Please.
Not at all. Thank you, Tanya. And we're almost there. I just want to have 1 minute for if you have any questions. Just to comment on what Paula said, do no harm. And that starts with ourselves. Protect yourself. Don't put yourself in any kind of danger. And then that goes to others as well. So focus on skills, not on personal traits and what I see, what I don't like, but as a person have the right skills that I'm looking for, and provide spaces for people to speak up if unfair treatment is happening, and to not speak when you even see that happening at the workplace. It's very important. Now, I hear the most common excuse from managers, from team leaders: I don't have time for this. It's beautiful, it's fantastic, psychosocial issues are important, but deliverable tasks, outcomes, we are late, always busy. What I say, if you're busy, to have half an hour of this discussion, when this escalates into a conflict, the conflict becomes a crisis, people are going sick, they go on sick leave, we have extra support, we have more resources coming in, and at the end, you don't have time not to have this discussion, but too late. So be proactive, start when you need to start. And this is a summary, and I'm done, Tanya. I think it's like super timely. Feel free to contact me. Even if we're not in the same organization, I will be happy to provide advice, guidance, support, and we'll see who is responsible in your organization, and I can bridge you with them. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Thanos. I think it's been a very effective session. As always, there's never enough time. An hour and a half is definitely not enough time to do this. I think I did a 3-day course on unconscious biases. So I know it's impossible to cover everything you need to do, and there's so many conversations to be had. But I think you did it brilliantly, and we very much appreciate having you with us. And just for all your information, Thanos is also with me on the implementation board for the mental health strategy at the UN level. So he is multitasking and multifaceted. So he's an important person to know. Please do keep him in mind. Thank you once again, and thank you to you all for taking time out of your schedules for participating. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bravo, really. Thank you so much, really.
Have a lovely day, and thanks for inviting me. Tanya, I hope to see you soon.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Keep up the good work.